This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 101.5 FM. Good morning, Arnie Sherman. I haven't seen you in a while. How have you been?
I've been good. Good. How have you been? Where have you been?
Where have I been?
Yeah.
You know where I was? I was in Vancouver, BC.
Right.
On a little sojourn with my pals from BMG and AOL.
Right.
Pemberton, British Columbia.
You went to the Pemberfest?
Pembyfest.
Pembyfest.
Pembyfest, where Pearl Jam opened or headlined.
How are they?
They were amazing. They're, amazing. I got great pictures of Jeff Ament, the guy who's from Missoula.
Right.
So I'm going to have to send them to him when I get his private email address.
Good. That sounds good.
We saw Wiz Khalifa.
Did they sound as good as they used to?
Amazing, even better.
And Wiz? What about Wiz?
Wiz Khalifa was great. He did a great set. We saw J. Cole. We saw Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg.
Really?
Okay, Halsey. We saw a bunch of good bands. I felt older than I did when I got there.
I can't believe you're sober for this show. Did it take you all week to recuperate?
It took a 12-hour drive yesterday from Vancouver, but gladly I had to pull over to the side of the road twice to get my wits about me.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad that you made it back safely.
Next year you're coming.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. That's not my kind of talent, but I know it's your roots, and I'm glad you had a chance.
Thank you, Arnie. Thank you for asking.
So this week we have a great show lined up.
I'm excited.
We have Larry Kolb from TSI Health Sciences.
Yeah, I love it.
And he'll be joining us shortly. But first, I want to clear the air.
Okay.
This past week, there's been controversy at the Republican convention about plagiarism. And I've even gotten some phone calls related to our show. I know you don't even know this.
You did?
Yes.
I love it coming on the air. That's good.
That's right.
Instant
People have called
reaction.
me up to complain about inaccuracies in our dialogue on the show. And so I thought to do not a mea culpa, but to correct. I went back and listened, and I'm going to correct all the misstatements of all of our shows and clear the air and get it out of the way. So on the show with Jordan Tripp, I misspoke and said that Butte was a coal mining town.
Copper.
It is not. It's a copper mining town.
Okay.
And I did get a call from Butte saying...
You did?
Yeah. Have you ever been here before, Sherman? So I just want to clear the air. I know it's a coal mining town. I misspoke.
Good.
We also, in that same show, had mentioned Delonte West and the fact that he had been out panhandling for money.
Right.
Which was not accurate. It was later corrected. I also said in that show that he went to Providence, but he went to St. Joe's. So I misspoke on that. And, in fact, the follow-up articles on Delonte said that... he was out helping a homeless man, and he's not homeless himself, and all of that was misstated. He does have a history of mental illness, and so that's why some folks got confused about that.
Did someone complain on his behalf?
No, not complain, but I just felt the responsibility to
Sure, it's good. It's like the Times.
Clear the show up.
The New York Times does that, too.
Right. Also, when we talk about Grizz greats, I got complaint about missing some of the Grizz greats that have gone on to future careers. So I'm going to clear the air on that and mention the people that we haven't.
By the way, that's
before.
not a mistake. That's just you left some omission.
Omission. This is
omission. That's different.
Again, I want to respond to our listeners.
Subjective.
Who have called and said you didn't mention Larry Krystkowiak, who was a great Grizz basketball player, went on to coach in the NBA Milwaukee Bucks, and then is now coaching at the University of Utah. I did not mention my friend Wayne Tinkle, who was another Grizz great and was Montana coach who took him to
basketball.
the NCAAs.
You're thinking basketball.
I know, and went on to Oregon State. I did not mention directly Croy Bierman, who is married to one of the housewives of Atlanta and plays for the Atlanta Falcons.
This is like the Jackie Martling.
Right. I didn't mention Shan Schillinger, who's now a coach with the Grizz, but went on and played in the pros. And I didn't mention Dallas Neal, who was a neighbor of ours, who played for 4 years for the Atlanta Falcons after his Grizz career. And then last but not least, I did not mention the all-time great Michael Sugar Ray Richardson, who played here. And
Sugar Ray Richardson did?
Yes, you didn't know that. Played for the Knicks and now is an elementary school teacher. After he had coached some minor league basketball. So I wanted to correct that. And then on one other show, the mayor did correct me, but I wanted to go on record and correct it again. I did call mountain water Montana water, which was not correct. And it'll be back in the news again, as you know, because it's in the state Supreme Court deciding who should pay as much as $14 million worth of legal bills that were accumulated on both sides of that case.
You know what, Arnie? I got to be honest with you. I appreciate what you've done. You've cleared the air. I'm sure your listeners appreciate that. But most, if not all of those, were just omissions because you're always operating at a very quick speed. You're thinking on your feet. You're trying to keep the audience entertained. It's hard to remember. You can't name call everybody.
What do you mean we're on our feet? The listeners don't know we have a sauna here. We're sitting in the sauna.
But you're like
we're basking in the sun.
I think you're being hard on yourself.
Suntan lotion on us. No, I want to be accurate, particularly as accuracy is a key concept as we head into the Democratic convention. The presidential race is going to be a lot of focus on being accurate and talking clearly. So that's where we're at.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm sure our listeners do too. When we come back, our guest is going to be Larry J. Kolb, who co-founded TSI Health Services, Inc., and he is going to join us for the full hour. I can't wait. We'll see you right after the break. All right, we're back. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Larry. I want to clarify a statement made by my colleague here about your company. I've known you for a number of years, and you just celebrated TSI's 20th anniversary. And when I first knew you, it was Technical Sourcing International, and then it morphed into TSI Health Science, and it's now TSI Group. And you run the part of the company that's referred to as TSI USA. And for our listeners who don't know about the company, most of you don't. There's no reason for you to. It's probably one of the best-kept Montana secrets. But TSI is involved in producing nutraceuticals and pharmaceutical drugs. They have private branded products of their own. They do contract manufacturing for other companies. I have visited their factory in China that employs, I think, over 1,000 people are employed in China, working for a company that had its U.S. genesis here in Missoula, Montana. And I want Larry to begin by telling the story of how the company got started, how you met your Chinese partner.
Well, we met in the early 90s. I was selling for a company that was headquartered in Western Michigan, and we were importing vitamins and various supplement products from China, Europe, Japan. And I took the initiative to start a division and working with the Japanese on some cosmetic ingredients. And so I embarked on a very unsuccessful division that I tried to create, as it turns out, to facilitate arrangements with Japanese producers and calling on companies like Mary Kay, Revlon, Estee Lauder, and trying to introduce Japanese technology through these ingredients to these U.S. personal care companies. And the first time I met my partner, Joe Zhao, he was in charge of formulations at Amway Corporation. And so I brought him my portfolio of products, and the next thing I know, we're off to lunch, and we're on a 4-hour lunch talking about how we can start a company together. He happens to be from China, Shanghai, and he wanted to get back to China, and I talked to him about thoughts on how we could develop a nutraceutical business with chemicals out of China, fine chemicals out of China. And so that was really the initial lunch that we had together.
Sure.
Was the framework of a business plan that took place later on.
We're going to go over a lot of details, but I just want to spin forward 20 years. Tell me about the company right now. What do you got now from that conversation? Part of the reason I want to do that is because I have to tell you, in my professional career, I've had about 1,000 conversations and know of thousands more where some American meets some foreign rep or foreign person in an industry, and he says, oh, I can help you get started. I know people in my country. I know how to make things happen. And you know how many of those work out? Larry's is about the only one that's worked out.
Right? That's great.
Almost every case, it doesn't work. And Larry has made it work. So now let's spin forward. What's the company look like 20 years later?
Well, we have, as you mentioned, quite a few employees globally. We have 7 manufacturing sites in the Jiangsu province, which is primarily raw material manufacturing. We have a finished dose manufacturing company that we acquired in Brisbane, Australia. So we have integrated the supply chain in China, do contract manufacturing primarily for the Australian consumers. And then we have an innovative products division that I'm heading up where we do clinical research with different universities, claims substantiation for everything from launching sport nutrition ingredients to ingredients that are helpful for osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and sarcopenia muscle health for the aging population.
So my dog and me can take the same medication, right?
Absolutely. In fact, when we have a successful product that hits the human nutritional market, like chondroitin and glucosamine, we manufacture chondroitin and glucosamine. The most immediate impact is you see these pet supplements sprout up in Petco and PetSmart because the owners want their dogs to have the same thing that they're taking.
Right.
Wow.
So I wasn't just making a joke. It's true, right?
Absolutely.
Arthritis.
So how did a Montana boy who was a wide receiver and forced into being a quarterback at Hellgate High School during your prime and went off to, Arizona State, how did you end up becoming an expert at contract manufacturing and research in a nutraceutical business? Tell me that story.
Well, I started in Western Michigan. I graduated from Arizona State looking for a job, and it just so happened, luck, my dad put me in touch with a business owner in Western Michigan that was doing these. It was actively involved in this industry. And so it was a very small company, 3 of us, and I wore multiple hats. I learned how to run a business very early, the accounting systems and all those types of things, transportation, logistics. And then I got into sales. That's what I really wanted to do, primarily to get back to Montana. And so, the genesis of my experience was like almost a mini MBA program working for that small business. And so I came back to Montana, and I was laid off after 2 years. I sold my interest in that business in Michigan, came back here, took a pay cut because I really wanted to get back home and be with my family. And I was laid off after 2 years, and I had an offer to go to Chicago as a sales business development director and an offer in Portland. And I said, now's the time for me to go back and reconnect with Joe, the guy that I met at Amway, and we had that makeshift business plan together. And we were fortunate enough to come in with a third partner, Inabata and company. It's a general trading company out of Japan. They provided the seed capital, a lot of the financial support in the early days, and that's how I started it.
Well, this is
basically just to stay in Montana.
What a great story.
This is very alien for Montana, right? To have Japanese and Chinese partners. And so how much time you spend on the road these days? You wanted to come back to Montana, but now you're involved in running a global company with, as you mentioned, facilities in China and Brisbane, Australia. How much time are you on the road?
We have a very good team, good management team. I spend about a week a month on the road.
How often in China?
I go to China for sales meetings and board meetings, so I'm there probably 3 times a year.
Okay.
I've got a very good partner over there that runs the operation, and he's got a full team that is really focusing on the operation, and then that allows me to really focus on the market and the business development and those types of activities.
So what have you learned about China and Chinese culture and working with Chinese partners and employees over these last 20 years? I mean, things have changed a lot from when you first started going over there. What would you share with our listeners about the China business experience?
Well, the first trip I took to China was in 1996, and it was a culture shock for me, coming from Western Montana and arriving in Shanghai. In those days, it was a construction zone. I mean, it was just a total mess, and cranes everywhere, building skyscrapers around every corner. It was truly a culture shock, and to see how that country has transformed from then till now, with the skyline of Shanghai with 2 of the largest buildings in the world, and all of the 5-star hotels and
right.
top-notch restaurants, and the quality of the infrastructure and everything that has grown over the last 20 years is just truly amazing.
Well, you remember, as I remember from being in China in those days, it was very controlled. You had a shop in the friendship store if you were going to bring a gift back for your family. You couldn't go into buildings or hotels or other establishments that you didn't have permission to go in. And now it's just like being in New York, right? You can walk everywhere, go everywhere pretty much.
Yeah, Shanghai's no different than New York City or Tokyo or Sydney, has a lot more people there than some of these cities. But I find it very interesting working with the Chinese people. The workers that we have are very hardworking and very dedicated. They're all very well educated. There's a very good base of talent there. I can say with the
is it competitive? Is it competitive to find good employees there?
It is, because of the growth that China's experienced, especially after the last 10 years. We do have a lot of companies that are picking off some of our best, especially in our quality control labs. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pharmaceutical companies over there that they see a good technician in our lab and they can move immediately. And so we are always trying to keep up with the salary raises and everything else.
Which have gone up a lot over the years, for sure.
It has, yes.
The other thing that probably you wouldn't know, Scott, necessarily, but they're in certain industries in China, they're importing workers from the Philippines.
Is that right?
Because there's not enough trained Chinese. They relocate maybe from the inner China to the coastal cities, and they're not trained to work in quality control or in a factory environment, and they have to bring in workers from the outside.
Interesting.
Another interesting piece, Arnie, that you probably have seen too is back in the early days in Shanghai, they just had a tremendous population of countryside farmers, essentially what they refer to them as, looking for work in the metropolitan, the Tier 1 cities. We're seeing that population has now been able to move back to their Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 7 cities, because all of those cities are now experiencing this growth,
wow.
this transformation on the infrastructure. So Shanghai actually, to your point, sometimes has a labor shortage, because
That's incredible.
What used to fuel the city back in the old days is now all those people are back in their hometowns.
And the wages follow to those Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 7 cities ultimately, right?
Yeah.
That's the way it's all going to go.
Yeah.
Wow.
So switching over, what is do folks in Australia and in China and in other markets you sell your nutraceutical products to want the same things? Is it similar?
Yeah, generally speaking, we sell nutritional products with a major emphasis in dietary supplements. They're dietary supplements in this country. They're food supplements, but for instance, like glucosamine in the United States is a dietary supplement. In Western Europe, it's a prescription drug, and so there's a.
And what do they prescribe it for?
The same thing, arthritis.
Sure. Okay.
So one's over the counter, the other's behind the counter.
Correct.
What do you make of what's going on now with the Russians in the Olympics and all that doping that's happening? I mean, that's been well known for years.
Well, they're using a little bit stronger stuff than
they are. But
I should have taken that stuff when I was the quarterback at Hellgate. probably would have had a better record than 3-7 that year.
Who's manufacturing it for them? I mean, what's the? Give us some insight into.
Well,
that.
This whole
Not that you do that, but I'm saying.
Anabolic steroids and these different substances are readily manufactured in countries like China. Mm-hmm. And they can be readily accessed and exported throughout the world. That's been the case for decades. You can get these substances. They're not difficult to make, and unfortunately, you've got a lot of bad players out there that have access to these. And the good thing, though, I think in the anti-doping community and these industry watchdogs is they're finding techniques to detect these substances and police the athletes and everything else. WADA and USADA and all these different agencies are getting very, very sharp on their analytical techniques. So the good news is that it's very, very difficult these days to cheat the system with these materials.
Right, sure.
How do you deal with the issue, which I'm sure you have to deal with, that there's been some scandals coming out of China of baby formula and other foods being tainted or having inferior quality products? I'm sure it affects you. People ask you in the United States, how do I know that what I'm getting is what you say it is? What steps do you take to ensure that kind of quality is coming in your products?
Well, that's the underpinnings of TSI. That's why we have 7 factories, because in order to really be 100% sure of what you're delivering to the world, you really have to know all the way up to the factory and the products, the inputs that you put into your factory.
Right. One mistake, one scandal, and you're done, right? The company's done pretty much.
Exactly.
So you have to really pay attention. So how do you do that?
Well, you have to have the right sourcing team in place that knows the raw materials. You have to put forth quality programs around the testing of the materials coming in. You have to audit your suppliers, make sure that they're astute and not cutting corners the best you can. For instance, we are a manufacturer of ginkgo extract. Everybody knows ginkgo extract. It's good for mental acuity and cognitive function. And
do you have some for me? Because I need it badly.
I've got quite a bit if you want it.
He just forgot a couple of players. That's not a big deal.
So ginkgo's been adulterated like the melamine. That's all economic adulteration, where they substitute melamine into baby formula, which is harmful, but it tests out as a wheat gluten,
right.
A high protein wheat gluten.
Right.
Melamine will fool the test, and melamine's cheap. Wheat gluten's more expensive. The rest is history. The players blended in the melamine to lower the cost, and
that was
passed
spoiled
the test, and that it killed pets, it killed babies. And so that's economic adulteration.
Let me speaking about products like you're talking about. You don't. Do you see certain regions of the world have a higher need or incidence for sleep aids, dietary aids, arthritis? Is it just a Western world type these type of problems?
Well,
right? Are these universal problems?
Well, the fish oil market's huge.
Huge.
It's just not very big in Norway. Why? Because they all eat fish there
every day.
Right.
So yeah, there's generalities around Western populations that are dictated by their diet, where you will see, like you'll see a lot more vitamin D in Canada used versus, in Mexico.
Right,
sure.
Because of the sun. How about, but like things like sleep aids and dietary, is that a universal type of need?
Well, I think so. I think when you're getting into those categories, I honestly don't know the answer to that with respect to sleep aids.
Right.
I think it is, generally speaking, like the market for melatonin is strong globally. I don't see it spiking in one market from the other.
I just happened to look in a drugstore today, and I'm looking at shelf space and all the real estate given towards certain aids that weren't. It was half the shelf space
that
5 years ago.
Didn't even recognize.
They created categories.
Do you have a product that dominates your repertoire or your range of products that you sell? Is there one that?
Yeah, we manufacture the chondroitin glucosamine, the joint care products. Those have.
And how many tons of raw material do you need to meet your requirements?
Well, we produce thousands of metric tons of glucosamine, for instance.
And what's the raw material in that?
That comes from it historically has been shellfish.
Right.
So the shrimp shells, the skeletons of the shrimp and the crab are ground up and extracted the chitin, and then the chitin is used to manufacture via synthesis the glucosamine finished materials.
Right.
The industry is advanced, and now it's more of a fermentation-based technology that we're employing and others are employing for the glucosamine production.
So is it hard to get the raw materials, or they're readily available? Because you're producing thousands of metric tons.
They're readily available. It just comes down to who's got the best cost position. And,
sure.
And so that's where you're seeing these emerging technologies that are less expensive than the traditional, biomaterials that are collected.
Right.
Our guest is Larry Kolb here on What Do You Know? He founded TSI Health Sciences.
And which is now TSI Group, and he runs TSI USA.
Okay, right.
just to be accurate.
My goodness
this is the week of accuracy. So do you have a major competitor in the U.S. market, or how does the competition landscape look?
We're kind of a unique company because we've got these three divisions: the innovation division, the contract manufacturing division, and we call it the bioactive material division. And so in innovation, we create patented materials that are clinically substantiated with research and peer-reviewed trials. We have a host of competitors in that area. Not really anybody that goes up directly against us because we have really proprietary products.
Right.
The bioactive materials like the chondroitin glucosamine manufacturers of the world all compete with us. There's many in that arena.
Yes.
So that is more of a commodity type product line.
Larry, is your product consumer facing, or is it B2B where you're then selling it to a third party who's marketing it and putting it under a different brand name?
B2B. So the ingredients,
you're B2B.
Yeah, the ingredients would be sold to a company that's manufacturing, either the brand manufacturer or a contract manufacturer for the brand. And then in our contract manufacturing division, we're basically manufacturing the finished product for these companies. They put the label on it and sell it.
So you could find your products in places like where would be retail locations that customers would find you?
Most of the food, drug, mass in the U.S., the club channel, Costco, Walmart, specialty shops, GNC.
So you walk in there and you know which ones obviously are yours.
Do you? Do you? Actually, that's a good question.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
And that must give you some great sense of satisfaction, that here you were, a broken down quarterback at Hellgate High School, and now you can walk into the GNC in the mall and see your products on the shelf.
Where are most of your customers located? I mean, they're obviously all over the world, but where's the biggest concentration?
We have you mean in terms of globally or
globally?
We have a big concentration of customers in Australia.
Okay.
We have a decent concentration here in the U.S. We do a fair amount of business in the U.K.
Where in the U.S., by the way? California, New Jersey?
There's a hotbed of nutritional companies in the Salt Lake Valley.
Okay.
A lot of multi-level marketing companies.
Yes.
It
keeps coming back to that.
New Skin, USANA.
Yes.
Right.
Pharmanex, all these guys are down there.
doTERRA.
Los Angeles is really a good place for, Herbalife's down there. You've got a whole host of contract manufacturers down there. All throughout the northern and southern California, and then the East Coast. The New Jersey is really New York, New Jersey, Florida. So those are the primary areas that we have clusters of customers.
Wow.
And Australia is interesting because it's a country that is not very large. It's about 23 million people, yet they seem to have a propensity towards supplements and healthcare and that sort of thing, because you probably have a disproportionate amount of customers there than you would in other countries, right?
Yeah, but I mean, for a country that has that population base, Arnie, it's amazing how much export business they have that services all of Southeast Asia. And for Australian brands, the Chinese consumer actually wants that brand over a Chinese branded product.
Is that right? There's bias?
They trust the foreign brand. And so there's all this cross-border trade that's going on between China and Australia, and it's just made a number of those companies boom the last few months, because the Chinese consumer are now awarded access to this cross-border. They're shipping from Hong Kong. They're shipping from enterprise zones within China that are foreign bonded areas, and they ship it directly via online services directly to the consumers in China.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So not to divulge any corporate secrets, but you have a development company and you're developing new products, and is there an area in this industry that's sort of the next horizon that people are focused at, that you're developing products for?
We really have a good niche right now going in the sport nutrition.
Yes.
And globally, sport nutrition is booming. We see it in Japan, where the market has just doubled within the last 12 months.
Wow.
The U.S. market has always been strong. It's kind of the catalyst of the innovation. And the U.S. brands are very popular around the world.
Is it for like joggers or golfers or just weightlifting, or is it?
Really, the history of sports has been focused around the real hardcore bodybuilders.
Right.
And that's where really a lot of these brands have been targeted. But as you see the growth of the market take shape, you're seeing it going into endurance athletes. Weekend warriors. They want something that is going to help them. The protein powders are just exploding.
All three of my sons take supplements when they work out, after they do shakes and things like that. 5 years ago, if you had a Gatorade, you would have felt like you were supplementing. I mean, it's literally, or 10 years ago. I mean, it's explosive because now it's hit the general population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even elderly, people are wanting, like some of the products that were born in the sport industry are now finding their way into the aging population. I mean, if you look at some of the ads now on Abbott Nutrition and their InLive, it has HMB in it. The ad is on a bad golfer who wants to keep golfing, and the message is maintain your muscle health.
Right. What about military applications? Have you had any experience in that area? It would seem that you talk about endurance, and you got soldiers, and fighting men stationed where they need endurance support. Do they generally take supplements, or is that something that you're exploring?
No, I mean the military is very big in supplementation. I mean, you can imagine the fatigue that the soldiers go through,
sure,
and how you need to maintain your endurance, your energy levels, your strength. All of those things are very important, especially for combat troops in these people.
Sure.
So, yeah, military is very, very big market.
That's incredible. Let's talk Missoula, Montana. How many folks do you employ in Missoula?
We have about 5 here in my office, and we have some external consultants and
sure.
businesses that help fortify our staff, but a very small staff in Missoula.
And are they focused on sales and marketing and supporting you?
Yeah, we have marketing, we have accounting here, logistics for North America.
Got it.
And we also have some R&D folks that we work with here. So it's really more on my division, which is the innovative products, as well as logistics and sales.
Okay, good. And are you able to find good talent in Montana?
Yeah, Montana's got great talent.
How about infrastructure like connectivity and support services to run a business?
Yeah, it's all here.
You're good.
Yeah. The only problem is probably cost of
getting in and
out of here.
Right.
It does tend to be more expensive than, if you're at a hub city or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting.
Sure. So what are your future plans? Is there plans for growth here in the U.S.? Is most of the growth going to be abroad for the company? You happy with the size? I mean, what's your 5-year plan? Where do you see TSI 5 years from now?
Well, right now we have a plan in place that was initiated, I should say, in January. That's a 3-year plan to double the business, and so we're doing well in accordance to the plan. There's some hiccups we can see, like any business. Everything doesn't always go according to plan. But overall, I think we're very happy and satisfied with where we are with this plan. I see a huge opportunity for all American businesses to grow in China. I think that the Chinese consumer, the demographic in China, the population that's middle class.
Well, 300 million. It's well over 300 million that are considered middle class by our standards, and probably a lot more based on theirs. That's bigger than that's equivalent to the size of the United States, all being in a good financial situation.
And they want, as I mentioned on the Australian business, they want foreign brands. They want to have in supplements. They want foreign brands. They trust the U.S. They trust Australia more than their products, rightfully so. For the example we talked about on the melamine and these types of things.
Right, they know about it too. I mean,
what is, by the way, retention and of employees over in China? You had mentioned that there's a lot more competition, so people are getting literally wooed by other companies. But how do you retain them? We
have a very good management team that, fortunately, knock on wood, we've been able to retain most of them. And we just have to be competitive.
Does that include services at work, like comfort, feeding them,
It's culture,
good benefits?
It's culture. It's all of the above. But, for instance, for our 20th anniversary, we just had all 30 of the executive team globally to celebrate in Hawaii.
Got it.
And for our team in China, well, for that matter, the Australians, a lot of people haven't been to Hawaii before. So that was the first time we've done anything like that.
Oh, sure.
But that does that makes our employees understand that we appreciate them. And it's a good culture, and we always are thinking about them because without them we're nothing. And
sure,
we're very focused on them.
What has been your history with sort of culture clash in a way? I mean, not all the time are Chinese business end game the same as U.S. I know when I dealt in Russia, and I was a partner in our ambulance company there, I wanted returns on, quarterly returns on my investment, and they wanted all the money reinvested to build the biggest thing that could possibly be built. Mm-hmm. Are those similar, conflicts that you see, or what are the ones that are endemic to, dealing in China?
Well, my experience in dealing with China has been, to a certain degree, massaged and maintained by my partner. I mean, he's Chinese, he's very sharp, and he's very good.
And he went to graduate school. He went to University of Cincinnati and that's where he got his master's degree. So he's familiar with how the U.S. and he worked in the U.S.
He worked in the U.S. He understands both cultures, and he really understands the Chinese culture and what our expectations as a business are for that operation. So that's critical. You talked about a lot of the businesses that fail when they try to go over to China. Well, that's one of the major failures is you need to have somebody that knows what's going on, that provides you the platform there that you can trust.
Sure.
And so I've been very fortunate that I picked the right partner to work with there.
How is he doing now? How is he? How's your partner now after 20 years? You guys have probably celebrated a lot, but also had a lot of challenges along the way.
We're always facing challenges, and you really have to be dedicated if you want your business to succeed, especially the complexity with our business. You really have to embrace challenge, and more importantly, you have to embrace change.
Right.
Change is one of the most difficult things to embrace as a business because you get so set in your way, and in human nature, nobody really wants to change.
Right.
And I can say that's one. We were forced to change several years ago and restructure, and we did. It was a very difficult process, but in the end, it makes you better. And so I think, our partnership, we embrace those principles. It also helps that we're best friends.
That's great. I was going to say, you guys have to be really tight to be able to work together for that long and to help build a business together. And you come from two different backgrounds.
Well, and also you have levels, of change, right? You have things that you want to do internally to your own company. You have change in consumer patterns and market and competition and just natural market forces. And then you have change that can be imposed by government, particularly in China, where it's not an open, transparent democratic process. The government tomorrow can come and say you're going to pay 38% more in social taxes, or you're going to give your employees 9 more days vacation. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that.
But that happens. It happens.
I know it happens it happens every day.
I talked about the cross border. Well, the Chinese government just put up some huge barriers to cross-border trade that completely reworked all the pricing structure.
Oh, my goodness.
And so that really was a major hiccup that we're still trying to work through. But the most important thing is whether it's the government or your customers or, listen to your customers. If you say something and it's not working, listen to what they want and then change. The same thing with the government. If the government puts something up that you just, you can't get around, modify your business so you can, or that you can augment that division and do something.
You can't have a lobbyist in China, can you? It won't work.
You have to be flexible. You have to be creative. You have to embrace change, and you have to be, sometimes even not sneaky, but you have to think in a way you normally wouldn't think about it. I'll tell one quick story. When I had my ambulance company, we were bringing U.S. ambulances into the former Soviet Union. It was the Soviet Union at that time. And we would bring 36 vehicles over. And all of a sudden, the Russian government imposed a 100% tax on all vehicles that were coming into the country. Double the price.
Based on what? Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, just all of a sudden one day it's 100% tax. And so we're struggling. I mean, that's a lot of money on a $50,000 or $60,000 used vehicle. That's now a $120,000 vehicle. And you got to pay the government in cash. You can't take out a loan, right? Or you can't pay them off in time. So we're trying to figure out what to do, and we found out there was no tax being imposed on assembly of vehicles. So we took all the bumpers and lights off the ambulances and put them in a separate container, took the vehicles semi-stripped down.
That's
and
crafty.
And then we had people attaching the bumpers and the lights back on in Moscow, and we avoided, we got around the tax. I mean, so sometimes you have to really... because you're overwhelmed, or your entire business could be at stake should there be something imposed that's so onerous that you couldn't continue to operate if you let it take over your business.
That is, those are market conditions you weren't predicting.
Yeah, well, it's even beyond market. This has nothing to do with the market. It has to do with arbitrary, whims of government or macro things that are going on. They're pissed off on something about cross-border trade, and you're just a casualty of war in that process.
Yeah.
So let me tell, for the people that are listening that are small business people. I mean, you started out as a very small business. What kind of advice do you have here in Missoula? You're starting a business in Missoula. You got a good idea. You want to sell internationally because 97% of the world's consumers are outside the United States. You have products or services you think have global potential. What are the few things that you, after 20 years, would tell them that they need to pay attention to as they're launching?
If you could do it in a minute,
their business.
We're running up into a break.
Okay.
So I'll try to do it in a minute. I think with any business you have to know the business. You have to know what you're doing. So you have to have a very solid plan. You have to get a plan in place. Number two, you have to have good people around you. If you're a small business, if there's two of them, make sure your partner is a good partner that can help complement where you're deficient and vice versa. Third, with that plan, as you execute your plan, be disciplined, focus, manage your money wisely, and your expenses, and try to have a budget that you stick to. And four, finance it. You got to have financing.
So you have to have debt.
You have to have debt, yes. You have to have debt if that's the way you go. If you bring in an investor or something like that, or however you get your you have to have financing. You have to have a safety net in the event that your plan doesn't work that keeps you going.
Our guest is Larry Kolb, co-founder of TSI. Back after this with our final segment. And we're back.
So I want to get back a little bit to your glory days at Hellgate High School, where you were. I remember from what I've read and we've shared that you were a wide receiver and then were forced into the quarterback role, and you were 3-7 that year, right? So you have two sons. Are they better athletes than you? And what are they spending their time doing sports wise?
They are better athletes than me, and thanks for reminding me of my record.
How old are they?
My oldest, Trey Kolb, is 16.
Okay.
He's going to be a junior at Sentinel High School.
Okay.
He is focused on making the JV basketball team and hopefully the varsity team in the next couple of years. And he's a very hard worker, a great kid. And I couldn't be prouder of him. He's also in track. He throws the javelin.
Wow.
And I was a sprinter, and I've done everything I can to tell him to sprint. I think he's got the frame for it. I think he could definitely beat my times, but he wants to throw the spear. So, and then my younger son, Hayden Kolb, he's an 8th grader, going to be an 8th grader at Washington Middle School. He is in football. Quarterback, and he plays, check this out, Arnie. He plays quarterback, offensive tackle, and nose guard.
And which does he like the best at this point?
I think he's talking more about sliding outside and being a DN like Kidder or somebody like that.
That would be nice. That would be nice. So do you put on the coaching hat and give them advice and work with them on that, or do they say, "Dad, come on, I don't need you. I got real coaches"?
They used to listen to me, and now they just kind of turn their back on me and shake their heads. Hayden also is on a very good club team, AAU team that travels all over. In fact, Thursday we're going to Vegas for a big tournament where they're going to compete with teams all over the West Coast. They're even playing a team from Mexico.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And what position does he play?
He plays forward for that team.
Right. How tall is he now?
16. He's about 6 feet now. He's 14, so he just.
All right.
I think he's on his way to 6'1" pretty quick. He's going to be a big kid.
Wow,
that's good.
That is amazing.
So they're better athletes in their own man. Huh?
And what do you do? What do you do in your free time? You can't work the whole time. You have to enjoy yourself here in Missoula.
He doesn't play enough golf. I know that for sure.
That I've given up that sport. That's a waste of time for me right now. With my travel schedule and work and everything else, I do try to spend as much time with my family. My parents are in town here. My sister and her family. So we try to get together with them on family occasions. We have a ranch just south of town that I try to get out to. I like to fish and get out of town and relax out there.
I know for a while you were walking up to the M twice a day. Are you still walking up to the M?
Me and my buddy Grant Lincoln are pretty diligent on that. We do it 3-4 times a week.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good for you.
During the noon
I
hour.
thought about it once. But
I remember one time I was with you. You told me and a bunch of people at that club I belong to that hiking's overrated.
Yeah, totally overrated. Totally overrated.
What do you do with your free time? I know what you do.
Golf.
You like to golf.
I play golf, yeah.
You're a good basketball player, too.
Yeah, I was at one point, but not anymore.
Okay.
I play tennis. I used to play tennis.
Did you?
But golf is now the thing. In the twilight of my life, golf is just a nice sport. By the way, the recent tournament at the British Open was pretty amazing.
That was.
Just watching that. That was one of the great competitions. Golf usually is not that, on the edge of your seat kind
it's
of
great
a game. But when two guys are so far ahead of everyone else,
right,
and matching each other shot for shot, it does give you some, sense that it is the competitive sport that we all know it is.
Yeah, Arnie is a good golfer. I've played with him a few. You have too,
Yes, I know.
I mean, boy, he knows how to read the greens too.
Occasionally. I have
very
a lot more time.
Very consistent golfer.
He's very consistent.
Yes. Thank you for being so nice.
Wait, when did you get your start? Anyway, we can talk about that on a later show.
Yeah, right. That's another show.
Larry, what do you think about Missoula over the last, you've been here now for a very long time. How has it changed over the last 5 to 10 years?
Oh, I think obviously there's new things moving to town, new restaurants and all that kind of stuff.
How's the business vibe though?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you see? As you talk to your friends, and do we have what it takes to be a 21st century business environment? I mean, we're picked on a lot of lists as that's a great place to retire. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. As a good small American college town to retire in. Is this a good town to run a business in? Would you encourage people to come here?
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm from here and my family's here and all that.
And you made the decision to come back here. You had you went other places.
And part of the reason I have TSI now is because I had to find a way to stay here.
Right. Which is motivation for a lot of people. They want to live here. Maybe they can't get a good paying job, so they have to create their own revenue source.
That's what I tell everybody. Yeah. If they're complaining about the work environment, I say just start your own thing.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's got a lot of the attributes to be a great place to domicile your business, and it's got a tremendous resource of employees here that are wanting to stay in Montana, just like I do. That are very, very dedicated because, jobs are precious here. I have an affiliation with the Montana World Trade Center and I work a little bit with the Mansfield Center. And I do hear about a lot of businesses, startups, either facilitated through the University of Montana, the Montech Center in these areas, or, just unique, interesting businesses that are moving to town in all areas, all different industries. It's really surprising to me.
Well, before you leave, we have to talk about the most important thing for the show. More important than your business, your family. You're still on the athletic advisory board for the university?
Yes, I am.
What's the chances for the Grizz this year? What's your prognosis for the?
This is the flagship station of the Grizz, by the way.
Yeah, this is the flagship station for the Grizz. What do you think about Coach Stitt and what the Grizz are going to put on the field this year?
Well, last year in his first year, he beat the number 1 team
in the first game.
That was great, right?
And I think the staff. I credit the staff. I credit Coach Stitt. I think they've really done a great job of growing the nucleus of the existing team. I see the linemen are getting bigger. I think they've really addressed a lot. Well,
Caleb was picked the Big Sky defensive player.
Yeah, and Caleb's actually smaller, which is a good thing.
Yes.
I think that they've addressed a lot of their really important needs with some transfers in the secondary and wide receiver. They've got a whole new stock wide receiver. I think it's going to be critical for some of these young people to step up. But you have a veteran quarterback that's very capable. In fact, I think I just read that he's one of the top rated quarterbacks in the country on some prospect list. So I think they have all the elements. It's their second year.
Right.
I think Coach Stitt's system is probably getting ironed out with them, and they understand it. So I'm really excited to see what this.
Well, we were picked to be number 2 in the Big Sky. There are 13 teams now, which is change. For the first time in a number of years, Eastern Washington wasn't picked number 1. Northern Arizona was picked to win the Big Sky. What if you had to make a guess at our record? Your projection for the Grizz record this year? What do you think?
I think they're going to have a tough time on the road against NAU.
Right.
I'm a little worried about that game. I think they'll go through the conference with 1 loss. They'll make it, past maybe the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. And if they're healthy and some of these guys step up, we might see them back in Frisco.
That would be great.
Wow, that's a big prediction, and it's a good prediction.
And one that makes us all excited because they'll be strapping it on in just a few more weeks.
You've been a delightful guest. Thank you, Larry, very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been great seeing you again, catching up, and good luck in China.
Thank you.
All right, Arnie, I will see you next Sunday.
See you next Sunday, Scott. Take care.
Have a great week.